Her racist boss refused to pay her fairly and told her she'd never make it, but she got the last laugh in a way that will blow your mind. The office was buzzing with the usual Monday morning chaos, phones ringing, printers humming, and the faint chatter of co-workers exchanging weekend stories. For Danielle Roberts, however, the atmosphere felt heavier than usual. It always did when she had to face her boss, Mr. James Calloway. Danielle had been working at Calloway Enterprises for 5 years, pouring her heart and soul into her role as a marketing specialist. She had spearheaded campaigns that doubled the company's revenue, mentored new hires, and worked late nights to meet impossible deadlines. Yet, despite her tireless dedication, she always felt invisible to her boss. She tried to shake off the nerves as she sat at her desk, rehearsing the words in her head. This was the day she planned to ask for the raise she had rightfully earned. Her co-workers had warned her. "James doesn't like being pushed," said Karen, the receptionist, lowering her voice conspiratorially. Well, let's just say he's old school. And you know what that means." Danielle knew exactly what that meant. Mr. Calloway had a history of making sly, coded comments. "You're so articulate for someone like you," he'd once said in a meeting, leaving the room silent with discomfort. Another time he dismissed one of her ideas, only to praise the same suggestion when voiced by a white colleague a week later. By lunchtime, Danielle mustered the courage to approach his office. She knocked softly on the heavy oak door. "Come in," came the curt reply. James barely looked up from his computer as Danielle stepped in, clutching the folder she'd prepared with detailed evidence of her contributions to the company. "What is it, Danielle?" he asked, his tone already impatient. Danielle inhaled deeply, forcing herself to stay composed. "I wanted to discuss the possibility of a raise," she began, her voice steady, but tinged with vulnerability. "I've been with the company for 5 years, and during that time, I've increased client retention rates by 40%, secured major accounts like Titan Tech and—" James held up his hand, cutting her off mid-sentence. He leaned back in his leather chair, folding his arms with an air of condescension. "Danielle, let me stop you right there," he said, smirking. "I don't think you understand how things work here. Raises aren't handed out just because you think you deserve one." "But sir," Danielle said, her voice cracking slightly, "the numbers don't lie. Enough," James barked, slamming his hand on the desk. "You should be grateful to have a job, especially in this economy. People like you," he paused, letting the weight of his words linger, "should know better than to aim so high." Danielle felt the sting of his words like a slap across her face. Her hands trembled as she clutched the folder, now meaningless in her grasp. The humiliation was unbearable. But what hurt more was the familiarity of it all. She had faced similar dismissals her entire life. From teachers, managers, and now from the man who owed much of his company's success to her hard work. She stood there, silent, while James casually turned back to his computer, as if she were no more significant than a piece of office furniture. "Close the door on your way out," he added dismissively. Tears burned in Danielle's eyes as she walked back to her desk. She wanted to scream, to quit on the spot, but something inside her refused to let him win. Instead, she sat down, wiped her tears discreetly, and began to plan. That evening, as Danielle walked out of the building, the weight of her humiliation pressed down on her. But beneath the pain, a fire was starting to burn. She thought about the years she had sacrificed, the ideas she had given away, and the talents that had gone unrecognized. "This isn't the end," she whispered to herself, clutching her bag tightly. Not for me. Little did James Calloway know, the woman he had dismissed so cruelly was about to change his life forever. Danielle spent the next week oscillating between frustration and determination. At night, she replayed the scene with James over and over in her mind. His smirk, his dismissive tone, and those cutting words, "People like you should know better than to aim so high." But by the weekend, something inside her shifted. She realized she wasn't just angry. She was tired of shrinking herself to fit into a world that underestimated her. As she sat at her small kitchen table, sipping coffee, an idea began to form. Danielle pulled out her laptop, opened a blank document, and began listing every skill, every success, and every client she had brought to Calloway Enterprises. The list was long, and as she stared at it, something became abundantly clear. She didn't just work for that company. She had helped build it. The next step was reaching out for advice. Danielle turned to Monica, her mentor from college, a successful entrepreneur who had always encouraged her to think big. "Let me get this straight," Monica said during their video call, leaning closer to the camera. "You've been carrying that company, and they don't even have the decency to pay you what you're worth." Danielle nodded, biting her lip. "It's not just the money, Monica. It's the principle. He made me feel like I don't belong there." Monica's eyes softened. "Danielle, you have two choices. You can let him keep you in that box he's built for you, or you can blow the whole damn box up." Danielle chuckled, but Monica was serious. "Listen to me. You've got the skills, the experience, and the connections. If he can't see your worth, maybe it's time you show him, and everyone else." That conversation became a turning point. Danielle realized she didn't need validation from James Calloway. She had everything she needed to succeed, and more importantly, she had something to prove. Not to him, but to herself. Danielle spent the following weeks networking, attending business seminars, and researching entrepreneurship. She worked late into the night, watching online courses on securing investors and scaling a startup. Her hard work began to pay off when she reconnected with an old client, Liam Carter. Liam had always admired Danielle's work ethic and creativity, and was now the CEO of a thriving tech company. Over coffee, she shared her vision of starting her own marketing firm, one that would prioritize integrity and innovation. "You've got something special, Danielle," Liam said, tapping his coffee cup thoughtfully. "Your ideas and drive are exactly what companies need. If you're serious about this, I'd be happy to invest." Danielle's heart skipped a beat. She had expected encouragement, but an offer of investment was more than she had hoped for. "I'm serious," she said firmly. "This isn't just a dream anymore. It's my plan." With Liam's backing and her savings, Danielle officially launched her own company, Elevate Marketing Group. She began small, working out of her apartment and building a team of talented professionals who shared her vision. Her reputation for excellence quickly spread, and soon she was securing high-profile clients, some of whom had previously worked with Calloway Enterprises. But it wasn't just about the clients. For Danielle, every success was a step closer to proving to herself and to the world that she was unstoppable. Late one evening, as Danielle reviewed her company's financials, an email notification popped up on her screen. It was from a business acquisitions consultant, a name she recognized immediately. Calloway Enterprises was up for sale. Danielle's breath caught in her throat. James Calloway had always boasted that his company was untouchable, a legacy he'd built from the ground up. But now, it was struggling, and he was looking for buyers. She stared at the email for a long time, a flood of emotions rushing through her. Here it was, the chance to not only take control of the company she had helped build, but also to show James Calloway exactly who he had underestimated. The fire that had been ignited weeks ago was now a blazing inferno. Danielle closed her laptop and smiled to herself. "This is just the beginning," she whispered. The meeting was set for a Thursday afternoon in a sleek downtown office tower. Danielle had meticulously prepared for this moment, armed with financial analyses, market insights, and the confidence she had built through years of resilience. She was ready to face James Calloway once again, this time, not as his employee, but as his potential buyer. As she stepped off the elevator and into the conference room, she felt a wave of nervous energy. Sitting at the far end of the polished mahogany table was James Calloway himself. His once arrogant posture now seemed subdued, his eyes weary and his shoulders slightly hunched. "Danielle," he said, blinking in surprise as she entered. "I wasn't expecting you." "Oh, I'm sure you weren't," she replied smoothly, her voice calm but resolute. "But here I am." James cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "Well, let's get started," he said, gesturing to the papers spread out before him. Danielle took her seat across from him, her back straight, and her eyes locked on his. She could tell he was trying to regain control of the situation, but she wasn't about to let him. The representative from the acquisitions firm began the presentation, outlining the declining performance of Calloway Enterprises. Revenue had been steadily dropping, key clients had left, and employee turnover was at an all-time high. James shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his expression growing darker with every statistic. "This brings us to the final point," the representative said, glancing at Danielle. "Ms. Roberts, as the lead investor for Elevate Marketing Group, is here today to present her terms for acquisition." James froze, his jaw tightening. "You?" he said, his voice dripping with disbelief. Danielle allowed herself a small smile. "Yes, me," she said, leaning forward. "You see, Mr. Calloway, I've been keeping an eye on this company ever since I left. And while it's unfortunate to see how far it's fallen, I believe there's still potential. Under the right leadership, of course." Danielle opened her portfolio, revealing a detailed plan for the company's revival. Her team had spent weeks analyzing Calloway Enterprises' strengths and weaknesses, and she was ready to lay it all out. "I'm offering to acquire the company for a fair market value," she began, her tone professional but firm. "My terms include a complete restructuring of leadership, a rebranding of the company's image, and a renewed focus on integrity and innovation." James' face turned crimson. "You can't be serious," he sputtered. "This is my company, my legacy." Danielle met his glare without flinching. "Your legacy?" she said, her voice steady but cutting. "Let's be honest, Mr. Calloway. This company thrived because of people like me, people you dismissed and underestimated. And now, it's struggling because you refuse to evolve." The tension in the room was palpable. Danielle could see the anger and disbelief swirling in James's eyes. But beneath it, there was something else. Fear. For the first time, he wasn't in control, and the realization was written all over his face. "You don't get to walk in here and take everything I've built," James said, his voice breaking slightly. "This isn't just business. This is personal." Danielle's gaze softened, but only slightly. "It's personal for me too," she said. "But the difference is, I'm not here to destroy what you've built. I'm here to make it better, for the employees, the clients, and the future of this company. Something you should have done a long time ago." James leaned back in his chair, visibly deflated. He ran a hand through his graying hair, the fight draining out of him. Finally, he sighed. "What's your price?" Danielle slid the document across the table, her terms clear and concise. "This isn't just about the money, Mr. Calloway," she said, her voice unwavering. "It's about doing what's right. Accept the deal, and I'll ensure this company thrives under new leadership. Fight me, and you'll lose everything." James stared at the paper for a long moment before finally picking up the pen. His hands trembled as he signed, each stroke of the pen a reluctant surrender. As Danielle walked out of the conference room, the weight of the moment hit her. She had done it. She had taken control of the very company that had once dismissed her. But as the elevator doors closed behind her, she couldn't help but wonder, would James Calloway ever truly understand the lesson he had just been taught? The following week, Danielle officially stepped into her role as the owner and CEO of Calloway Enterprises. The news spread like wildfire throughout the company, leaving employees stunned and curious. Whispers filled the halls about how the woman many had overlooked was now in charge. Danielle walked into the office on her first day with her head held high. She wore a simple but sharp black blazer, a deliberate choice to exude authority without the pomp of James Calloway's tailored arrogance. She knew this wasn't just about running a company. It was about rebuilding trust and reshaping the culture from the ground up. As she passed through the office, she noticed a mix of reactions. Some employees, particularly those who had seen her contributions during her time under Calloway, smiled in quiet approval. Others looked unsure, their skepticism evident. But what struck her the most was the resignation in the eyes of a junior employee, Alicia. Alicia was typing furiously at her desk, shoulders hunched and head down. Danielle remembered feeling that same defeated posture not long ago. "Good morning, Alicia," Danielle said warmly, stopping at her desk. Alicia looked up, startled. "Oh, good morning, Ms. Roberts," she stammered. "Danielle is fine," she replied with a reassuring smile. "How are you doing?" Alicia hesitated, clearly not used to being asked such a question. "I'm okay, I guess." Danielle crouched slightly, meeting her eyes. "Listen, I know what it feels like to be overlooked, to feel like your voice doesn't matter. But I want you to know, things are going to be different here. If you ever have ideas, concerns, or anything to share, my door is open." Alicia's expression softened, and for the first time Danielle saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Thank you," Alicia said quietly. Danielle's first order of business was addressing the toxic culture that James Calloway had fostered. She scheduled a company-wide meeting in the same conference room where James had dismissed her all those weeks ago. As employees filed in, the atmosphere was tense. Danielle stood at the front of the room, her presence commanding but approachable. "Good afternoon, everyone," she began, her voice calm but firm. "First, I want to acknowledge that many of you are likely feeling uncertain about the changes happening here. Let me assure you, my goal isn't to tear down what works, it's to rebuild what's been broken." She paused, letting her words sink in. For too long, this company has operated under a culture that prioritized power over people. That ends today. Starting now, we will foster a workplace where every voice matters, where contributions are recognized, and where respect is not just expected, but demanded. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Danielle took a deep breath and continued. "I've seen firsthand how dismissing good ideas and undervaluing people can lead to missed opportunities. That's not the legacy I want for this company. And I hope it's not the legacy you want either." Her words struck a chord. Even those who had been skeptical began nodding in agreement. While the company embraced its new direction, there was still one unresolved matter: James Calloway. As part of the acquisition agreement, James was required to stay on as a consultant for a 6-month transition period. Danielle wasn't thrilled about having him around, but she saw it as an opportunity to confront the past head-on. One afternoon, she called him into her office. James entered reluctantly, his once confident swagger replaced by a begrudging shuffle. "Have a seat, James," Danielle said, gesturing to the chair across from her. He sat down, his expression guarded. "What do you want?" he asked bluntly. Danielle leaned forward, her eyes steady. "I wanted to talk about the future of this company, and about the past." James scoffed, crossing his arms. "The past doesn't matter. What's done is done." Danielle's gaze didn't waver. "It matters, James. The way you dismissed people, the way you treated me and others. It set the tone for this company, and it's that tone I'm working to change." James shifted uncomfortably. "So, what do you expect me to do?" "Apologize." Danielle paused, her voice softening. "I don't expect anything from you, James. But I hope you take this time to reflect. You built this company, but you let your ego destroy it. If you're willing to learn from your mistakes, there's still a chance for redemption." James didn't respond immediately. For the first time, Danielle saw a flicker of something. Regret? Shame? She wasn't sure, but she knew it wasn't her job to fix him. As James left her office, Danielle leaned back in her chair, exhaling deeply. Confronting him wasn't about revenge. It was about closure. She had finally reclaimed her power, not just over the company, but over her own narrative. This wasn't just a new chapter for Calloway Enterprises. It was a new beginning for Danielle and everyone who had been overlooked, underestimated, or undervalued. But as Danielle looked out the window at the bustling city below, she couldn't help but wonder, could someone like James Calloway truly change? Or was this just the start of another battle? Months passed, and the transformation at Calloway Enterprises became impossible to ignore. What once felt like a cold, competitive environment now buzzed with collaboration and innovation. Employees who had previously kept their heads down began speaking up in meetings, sharing bold ideas without fear of judgment. Danielle walked through the office one morning, her heels clicking against the polished floors. She couldn't help but smile as she overheard a group of junior employees brainstorming by the coffee station. The energy was contagious, something she had never experienced during her years under James Calloway's leadership. The company's first major project under Danielle's leadership was a groundbreaking campaign for a client in the renewable energy sector. The project not only highlighted the company's creativity, but also reinforced its commitment to meaningful, forward-thinking work. The campaign became an instant success, earning praise from industry leaders and clients alike. Within weeks, Calloway Enterprises began attracting new clients who had been reluctant to work with the company during James's tenure. But for Danielle, the most rewarding part wasn't the financial success. It was seeing her team thrive. At the project's celebratory meeting, She stood at the head of the conference table, surrounded by her team. "This isn't just a win for the company," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "This is a win for all of you. Every idea, every late night, every ounce of passion you poured into this project made it a success. This is what happens when we work together, when we value each other's voices." The room erupted in applause, and Danielle felt a swell of pride. This was the culture she had always dreamed of building. James Calloway, now in the final weeks of his consulting period, had been a quiet observer of these changes. He spent most of his time in the corner office he used to command, watching as the company he once ruled evolved into something unrecognizable and undeniably better. One afternoon he approached Danielle's office, knocking lightly before stepping inside. She looked up from her desk, surprised to see him standing there. "James," she said, motioning for him to sit. "What can I do for you?" He hesitated for a moment, then sat down, his hands folded tightly in his lap. "I just wanted to say," he began, his voice faltering, "you've done good work here. Better than I ever thought possible." Danielle raised an eyebrow, unsure of his intentions. "Thank you," she said cautiously. James sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "I was wrong. About a lot of things. About you. About how I ran this company. I let my pride get in the way, and I hurt a lot of people." For the first time, Danielle saw vulnerability in James's eyes. It wasn't an excuse or a justification. It was an acknowledgement of his failings. "I can't change the past," he continued, "but I hope you'll keep doing what you're doing. This company is better in your hands than it ever was in mine." Danielle nodded, her voice steady. "Thank you, James. Acknowledging your mistakes is a good first step. I hope you find a way to move forward and make things right in your own way." On the one-year anniversary of her leadership, Danielle hosted a company-wide event to unveil a new name and mission for the organization. Calloway Enterprises was no more. Elevate Solutions was born. Standing on stage before her employees, investors, and clients, Danielle held the microphone with steady hands. "Elevate isn't just a name," she said. "It's a promise to elevate our work, our values, and most importantly, our people. This company was built on the backs of hard-working individuals who were never given the recognition they deserved. That ends now." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "We are a company that listens, that learns, and that leads with integrity. Together we're creating a legacy that we can all be proud of." The crowd erupted in applause, and Danielle felt tears sting her eyes. This was the culmination of everything she had fought for. The proof that no matter how many times the world tried to knock her down, she could rise above it all. As the event wrapped up and employees mingled with guests, Danielle found a quiet corner to take it all in. Alicia, the junior employee she had spoken to on her first day as CEO, approached her with a wide smile. "Danielle?" Alicia said, holding out a small card. "I just wanted to thank you. You've inspired me more than you'll ever know." Danielle opened the card and read the handwritten note inside. "Because of you, I believe in myself again." Tears welled up in Danielle's eyes as she hugged Alicia. It wasn't just about the company, the money, or even the recognition. It was about making a difference, one person at a time. And as she looked out at the room filled with smiling faces, Danielle knew she had done just that. Danielle had not only reclaimed her power, but transformed it into a force for good. What started as an act of defiance against injustice became a journey of empowerment, leaving behind a legacy of hope, resilience, and inspiration for generations to come.